Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comments section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Now let's start the story. Elena Carter's mornings were her sanctuary, a time when the world felt quiet and the pressures of her job and life didn't yet demand her attention. As she sipped her coffee at Grey House Coffee and Supply Co., sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the wooden tabletops and reflecting off her silver necklace. Spring had finally arrived, and the budding flowers along Northwestern Avenue brought a smile to her lips. It was the kind of day that reminded her why she loved Lafayette, charming, unassuming, and full of life. Elena had lived in the city for almost 6 years, her work as an engineer at Subaru of Indiana Automotive keeping her grounded. It wasn't her dream job, but it gave her structure and a sense of purpose. She thrived on solving problems, breaking down challenges, and rebuilding solutions piece by piece. It was a skill she relied on both at work and in her personal life, especially when things got tough. Her mornings at Grey House were a ritual, a small indulgence before heading to the plant or running errands. She flipped open her well-worn leather journal, jotting down her to-do list for the day. Pick up groceries, take her car to the shop, and maybe stop by the Tippecanoe Mall for some spring clothes. She was midway through a sip of her coffee when a loud thud against the shop's front window jolted her out of her thoughts. Elena looked up, startled, her hazel eyes narrowing at the sight of a man stumbling onto the sidewalk. At first, she assumed he was drunk. His disheveled appearance and uneven gait suggested as much. But as she watched, unease began to creep in. His movements were too jerky, his head lolling unnaturally as if his body were struggling to obey his brain. A small crowd began to gather cautiously, the way people always did when they didn't know if they should intervene or stay back. The man collapsed onto the ground, his body convulsing violently. Someone shouted for help, and a couple of paramedics arrived moments later, their flashing lights cutting through the street's midday calm. Elena's coffee cup sat untouched now, her hands gripping the edge of the table as she watched through the glass. One of the paramedics crouched down, checking the man's pulse while the other prepared a stretcher. For a moment, it looked like things might stabilize, but then the man's eyes snapped open. They weren't the glazed, confused eyes of someone waking up. They were something else entirely, wide, wild, and unseeing. Before anyone could react, the man lunged, teeth sinking into the arm of the paramedic nearest him. Screams erupted. The other paramedic tried to pull their colleague away, but the man's strength was terrifying. A bystander stepped forward, perhaps thinking they could help, only to be shoved violently to the ground. Instinctively, Elena stood, her chair scraping against the floor. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She'd never seen anything like this before, so raw, so animalistic. Part of her wanted to rush out and do something, but the other part, the rational part, knew she was helpless against whatever this was. "Get inside! Lock the doors!" A barista shouted, pulling customers away from the windows. Elena hesitated, her mind racing. She wanted to help, but what could she do against something so terrifyingly primal? Her feet felt rooted to the floor, torn between fleeing to safety and stepping into the chaos outside. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but as she glanced at the paramedic now pinned under the thrashing man, she knew stepping out there would only add to the list of victims. The barista's voice broke through her paralysis, and Elena finally turned, weaving through the panicked customers toward the exit. Her hands trembled as she pushed the door open, the sharp spring air biting against her skin. She retreated toward her car, her pulse quickening with every step. Once inside, she locked the doors and gripped the steering wheel, her chest heaving as she tried to collect her thoughts. The image of the paramedic's terrified face was burned into her mind. As she drove home through the quiet streets of Lafayette, her thoughts spiraled. She had witnessed plenty of struggles in life, job layoffs, family losses, and personal failures, but nothing like this. This felt different, unearthly. It was the kind of moment that tested everything she thought she knew about the world. At her apartment, Elena bolted the door and turned on the news. The headlines were all the same. Unexplained violent attacks in Lafayette, chaos spreads near Purdue University, and residents urged to stay indoors. Shaky footage played on loop, showing outbreaks on Sagamore Parkway and in local neighborhoods. The reporters looked pale and unsure, their carefully measured tones unable to mask their fear. Elena sat on her couch, her mind racing. She reached for her phone, instinctively thinking to check on her parents back in Terre Haute, but stopped. What would she even say? "Hey, something crazy is happening here, but I'm fine." The words felt hollow. Instead, she focused on practical steps. She packed a bag with essentials: a flashlight, a pocket knife, some protein bars, and a first aid kit she kept under her bathroom sink. Her instincts told her that whatever was happening, it wasn't going away anytime soon. Standing by her window, she watched as the city darkened under the weight of fear. Sirens wailed in the distance, and a faint chorus of screams echoed from nearby streets. Her neighborhood was usually serene, a mix of college students and young professionals, but tonight it felt like the quiet before a storm. She pressed her forehead against the glass, trying to steady her breathing. Whatever was happening, she couldn't just sit and wait for answers. She didn't know what the next steps were, but she knew she needed to be ready for anything. I don't even know where to begin. This morning feels like it happened in a different world. Just yesterday, I was sipping coffee at Grey House and planning my weekend errands. Now, I'm locked in my apartment, clutching a knife and listening to the sound of things outside my door. I can't believe this is happening. I've always thought of the waterfront apartments as safe. Sure, it's not luxury living, but it's home. My third-floor apartment has always been my retreat, my little perch above the world. Tonight, though, it's a cage. It started just after sunset. I'd been glued to the news all afternoon, trying to make sense of what was happening. They called it violent outbreaks and told us to stay indoors, but the footage they showed, it was horrifying. People attacking each other, biting each other. They didn't look human anymore. The way their eyes glazed over and their movements turned jerky, like puppets with broken strings. I tried to focus on practical things. I packed a bag with whatever I could think of, some protein bars, a flashlight, my first aid kit. But when I heard the first scream outside, all that focus vanished. I went to the sliding door in the living room and peeked out. The parking lot was chaos. A man was running. I think it was the guy from Building B who always jogs in the mornings. He didn't make it far. A woman tackled him to the ground, and for a second, I thought she was trying to help him. Then I saw her bite into his shoulder. I couldn't look away. He was screaming, flailing, but she didn't stop. More of them came. I don't even know where they came from. One was missing half its face, and its shirt was soaked in blood. They tore him apart right there in the parking lot. I shut the curtains after that, but I could still hear it. Screaming, snarling, the sound of ripping. I think I threw up. I can't remember. By 8, it was everywhere. I could hear them banging on doors, glass shattering, people yelling. My neighbors were running for their lives. The couple from downstairs tried to make it to their car, but they didn't even get halfway before. God, I don't want to write this. They didn't make it. At one point, someone was pounding on my door. "Let me in, please, for God's sake." I froze. I couldn't move. I wanted to help, but what if opening the door let them in? The pounding stopped, and then I heard noises, wet, tearing noises. I think that's when I started crying. The power went out around 10. It was like the building gave up. No lights, no TV, no more connection to the outside world. Just darkness and those awful sounds coming from the hallway and outside the window. I lit a candle, but it made me feel more exposed than safe, so I blew it out. Now it's just me and the shadows. Every creak of the building makes my heart jump. Sometimes I think I hear them outside my balcony door, brushing against the glass. I haven't looked. I can't. It's midnight now, I think. The screaming has stopped. That's not a good thing. I know what it means. Everyone who could run is gone. Everyone who couldn't is dead, or worse. I don't know how long I can stay here. I have some food and water, but not enough. I'm trapped. Even if I made it outside, where would I go? There's nowhere safe anymore. I keep telling myself to think, to plan, but all I can do is sit here and listen. I'm so scared. I've never felt fear like this before. Not the kind that makes your whole body shake and your mind race with 1,000 horrible possibilities. If anyone ever finds this, I want you to know I tried. I tried to stay calm, I tried to be strong, but I don't know if I can make it through the night. God help me. I survived the night. I don't know how, but I'm still here. The noises outside have faded a little. Maybe they're moving on, or maybe they've found more victims. I don't want to think about it too much. I didn't sleep at all. Every sound felt like a threat, every shadow another one of those things. I sat with my back against the wall, gripping the kitchen knife like it would actually help if something broke in. By the time dawn started creeping in through the curtains, I realized I hadn't moved in hours. The first thing I did was check the balcony. I pulled the curtains back an inch, just enough to see outside. The parking lot is, well, it's a graveyard now. Bodies everywhere. Some of them are still moving. Not people, though. Not anymore. They're just crawling around, dragging themselves over the asphalt. I saw one that was missing its legs, pulling itself along with its hands. I had to look away. I've been trying to figure out what to do next. I can't stay here, that much is obvious. The complex is too exposed. The power's out, and I don't know how long the water will last. My phone is almost dead, and there's no signal anyway. Even if I could call someone, who would come? There's a maintenance closet at the end of the hall. I remembered seeing it when I first moved in. It might have tools or something useful. I think it's worth the risk to check. The hallway has been quiet for hours, but that doesn't mean it's safe. I made a plan. I'll wedge the door open with a chair so I can get back inside quickly if I need to. I'll move slowly, quietly, and keep my eyes on everything. I can't afford to make any mistakes. Later, I made it to the closet and back. It was terrifying, but I did it. The hallway was darker than I expected. Some of the lights are flickering, and the shadows, they play tricks on you. Every creak of the floor made me jump. The closet didn't have much. A crowbar, some duct tape, and a flashlight that barely works. I grabbed everything. The crowbar feels heavier than I thought it would. It's not much, but it's better than the knife, I think. While I was out there, I heard something down the hall. Not close, but not far enough either. A shuffling sound, like feet dragging across the carpet. I froze listening, and it got louder. I didn't stick around to see what it was. I ran back to the apartment, locked the door, and barricaded it with the couch. The crowbar is beside me now. I keep holding it, testing its weight. I've never been in a fight before, never even thrown a punch. I don't know if I can do this. But if it comes down to me or them, I know what I have to do. Evening, it's getting worse. I can hear them more clearly now. They're in the building. The sound of breaking glass and distant screams is all around me. I think more people tried to get out and failed. I don't know how many are left alive. I've been trying to stay calm, but it's hard. I keep picturing the people I saw yesterday, the way they were attacked, torn apart. I don't want to end up like that. I'm not ready to die. Not yet. I found my grandmother's cross in my bag. I'd thrown it in there without thinking. Now I keep holding it, running my thumb over the smooth surface. It's strange, but it helps. It makes me feel less alone. I need to leave. I know that now. I've been watching the street from the window, and it's clear for stretches of time. If I can make it to my car, I might have a chance. I'll pack as much as I can and wait for the right moment. There's a gas station a few blocks away. If I can make it there, I can get supplies and figure out where to go next. I'm scared. No, I'm terrified. But staying here isn't an option. If I stay, I'll die. It's that simple. I don't know what's waiting for me out there, but I have to try. I have to believe there's something better than this. I'm writing this from the front seat of my car. My hands are still shaking, but I need to get these words down before the memory slips away or before something else happens. The apartment complex is gone. It's burning to the ground right now, and with it, everything I left behind. It started a little after dark. I'd been watching the streets, waiting for my moment to leave, when I smelled it. Smoke. At first, I thought it might be my imagination, or maybe someone outside had lit something on fire. But it got stronger, thick and acrid, stinging my nose and throat. Then I heard the shouts. Someone, I don't know who, must have started it. Maybe they thought fire would keep those things away. Maybe it was an accident. But whatever the reason, the fire spread fast, too fast. I could see the orange glow flickering under my front door, could hear the distant crackling as it ate through the lower floors. The heat seeped into the walls, and I knew I didn't have much time. Leaving felt like a death sentence, but staying was worse. I packed my bag in a frenzy, grabbing the crowbar, the flashlight, and whatever food I had left. My grandmother's cross went around my neck, and I slung my bag over my shoulder. Every second felt like a countdown. The fire alarm wasn't going off. It must have failed when the power went out, but I didn't need it to know the building was becoming an oven. When I opened the door, smoke rushed in, thick and choking. I covered my mouth with my sleeve and stepped into the hallway. The air was hazy, and the lights flickered weakly. I could barely see, but I didn't need to see far. One of those things was standing at the other end of the hall, its back to me. It was hunched over, feeding on something. Someone. My stomach turned, but I couldn't stop to think about it. The stairs were my only option. I moved as quietly as I could, every creak of the floorboards making my heart race. The fire had already reached the second floor, and the heat hit me like a wall as I descended. By the time I reached the ground level, the smoke was so thick I could barely breathe. I had to crawl to avoid the worst of it, my bag dragging behind me. The lobby was chaos. Flames licked the walls, and the windows had shattered from the heat. Outside, the parking lot was alive with movement. Figures stumbling, shuffling, some on fire but still moving. I didn't let myself think. I sprinted for my car, keeping my eyes straight ahead. One of them lunged at me from the side, but I swung the crowbar without stopping. I felt it connect, heard the crunch, but I didn't look back to see the damage. By some miracle, I made it to my car. The keys were already in my pocket, and my hands shook so badly I could barely unlock the door. I slammed it shut behind me and locked it, gasping for air as I fumbled to start the engine. The fire had drawn them closer. I could see them in the rearview mirror, closing in, their faces blank and hungry. The engine roared to life, and I floored it. My tires squealed as I tore out of the parking lot, swerving to avoid the bodies littering the street. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just needed to get away. I turned south onto Main Street, hoping to put as much distance between me and the fire as possible. At first, the road was clear, but the farther I went, the more abandoned cars and trucks began to block the way. Some had their doors open, as if their owners had fled in a hurry. Others had crashed into light poles or each other, forming an impassable wall of metal and broken glass. I stopped the car and stared at the mess in front of me. It stretched for blocks, a tangled maze of wreckage that left me no way forward. I could see shapes moving among the vehicles, hunched figures darting between the shadows. My heart sank. There was no way I could drive through this. I backed the car up, trying to find a side street that might lead around the blockade, but every turn seemed worse than the last. More cars, more bodies, more of those things. I finally pulled over, shutting off the engine and sinking into the seat. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached. I don't know how far I am from the Subaru plant. Miles, probably. Too far to walk. But I can't stay here either. The shapes in the shadows are getting closer, and the sound of groaning is filling the air. I need to find somewhere safe, somewhere to regroup and figure out my next move. The crowbar is on the seat next to me, and my bag is in the back. I'm going to wait for a break in the noise and make a run for it. Maybe I can find a building to hide in or another way around the wreckage. God, I hope I'm making the right choice. I don't have many left. I'm alive, barely. I walked for what felt like forever, dodging death at every corner, and now I'm holed up in a sushi restaurant. Sushi Don. I've been here a few times before. It feels surreal to be hiding here now, of all places. The sign outside still glows faintly, the last traces of power keeping it alive. I can hear them outside, the moaning, the shuffling occasional thud against the windows. They know I'm here, but they can't get in. Not yet. After the car became useless, I didn't have a choice. The road was blocked, and the only way forward was on foot. I took my bag and the crowbar and started walking. Every step felt like a gamble. The streets were littered with debris, broken glass, abandoned bags, and bodies. Too many bodies. Some were still, but others twitched or moved slightly, as if they were just waiting for me to come closer. I stayed in the shadows as much as I could, slipping between cars and ducking behind bushes. My heart was pounding the entire time. The worst part was the sound, the groaning. It's like they're calling to each other, letting the others know where they are. Twice I had to stop and hold my breath as one of them stumbled past me, so close I could hear the wet sounds of their breathing. I don't know how they didn't see me. Maybe they can't. Maybe they only react to sound. I don't know, and I'm not about to test the theory. I saw Sushi Don's sign in the distance and knew I had to try for it. The doors were still closed, the windows intact. It looked like the safest place around. I bolted across the street, my feet crunching on shattered glass, and yanked the door open. I barely had time to close it behind me before I heard the first thud against the glass. I thought I was safe. For a moment, I actually believed it. Then I heard the sound, a low growl coming from behind the counter. I froze, gripping the crowbar so tightly my hands ached. I moved slowly, my shoes sticking slightly to the floor. Someone had spilled soda or something during the chaos. That's when I saw it. It was one of the employees, or it used to be. He was still wearing the Sushi Don uniform, the black polo with the bright red logo. His name tag said Tim. Tim's face was wrong. His mouth was covered in blood and his eyes were vacant, lifeless. But he moved. He saw me. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound he made when he lunged. It was a guttural, wet snarl, like something out of a nightmare. He came at me fast, faster than I expected, and I barely had time to swing the crowbar. I hit him in the side of the head, but it wasn't enough. He stumbled, then came at me again. The second hit did it. The crunch of bone made my stomach turn, but he went down and didn't get back up. I stood there panting, staring at what I'd done. My arms were shaking, and for a moment I thought I might throw up, but I didn't have time for that. I dragged his body into the kitchen and closed the door, barricading it with a heavy metal cart. I don't know why. Maybe I just couldn't stand to look at him anymore. After that, I cleared the place, room by room. The storage area was empty, as was the bathroom. No more surprises. Once I was sure I was alone, I secured the front doors with chairs and anything else I could find. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. There was food in the kitchen. Not much, but enough. Pre-packaged sushi rolls, bottles of water, and cans of soda. I grabbed what I could and sat in a corner, trying to calm down. The food tasted like ash, but I forced it down. I needed the energy. Now I'm sitting in the dark, the crowbar next to me, listening to the sounds outside. They're still out there, wandering, searching. Every time one of them brushes against the glass, my heart skips a beat. I'm exhausted, but I can't sleep. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. All I can do is try to survive it, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. That's all I have now. God, I hope this place holds through the night. The sun rose, casting its light through the windows of Sushi Don. It felt surreal, the warm glow of morning juxtaposed against the horrors of the night. The faint moaning that had filled the darkness had faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. I stayed still for a while, listening for any movement outside, but the world seemed as still as it was broken. The silence was deceptive. It lulled me into thinking it might be safe. It wasn't. I had to move. I couldn't stay here, no matter how secure it felt for a night. My bag was lighter than I wanted it to be. I packed what little food and sodas were left in the restaurant, a couple of water bottles, a can of Diet Coke, and a few stale sushi rolls. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. Hunger was easier to deal with than the thought of being trapped here when the sun went down again. The Subaru plant was still my goal. It's the one place that feels like a second home to me. I know the layout, the tools, the machines. It might not be perfect, but it's big and secure. If I can get there, I might have a chance. The thought of those high fences and sturdy walls gave me the push I needed to get moving. With the rising sun giving me courage, I set off again, crowbar in hand. Walking through the empty streets of Lafayette felt like being in a dream, or more like a nightmare. The city was quiet, but not peaceful. Cars were abandoned in intersections, storefronts were smashed open, and debris littered the sidewalks. Broken glass glittered in the sunlight, and the faint smell of smoke hung in the air, a reminder of the fires that had burned during the chaos. I kept my crowbar in my hand and my ears tuned to every sound. The silence was unnerving, and every step felt heavier than the last. My own breathing sounded too loud, and every crunch of gravel underfoot made me flinch. When I reached Lafayette Marketplace, I knew I had to stop. I needed supplies if I was going to make it further. The parking lot was eerily empty, save for a few scattered cars. One of them had its door open, the interior splattered with blood. I tried not to look too closely. The front doors of the store were shattered, leaving shards of glass glittering in the morning light. I slipped inside, gripping the crowbar tightly. The inside was worse. Shelves were toppled, products spilled across the floor, and there was a metallic tang in the air, blood dried and smeared across the tile. My stomach turned, but I pushed forward. I needed supplies, and this might be my only chance to find them. I found a half-empty box of protein bars near one of the registers and shoved it into my bag. There was a rack of bottled water nearby, and I grabbed two, grateful for the weight they added to my pack. Then I heard it, a low guttural groan that sent a shiver down my spine. I froze, listening as it grew louder. My breath caught in my throat, and I turned toward the sound, my heart pounding. At first I couldn't see anything. Then, from behind a row of overturned shelves, it emerged. A zombie stumbled out from the shadows, its movements jerky and unnatural. Its skin was pale and mottled, with dark veins spreading across its face like spiderwebs. Its eyes locked onto me, lifeless yet filled with hunger. It wore the tattered remains of what might have been a business suit, now torn and stained with blood. It moved faster than I expected, reaching for me with gnarled fingers. I tried to back away, but my foot caught on a fallen display rack, and I stumbled. Its hand latched onto my arm, and I felt its cold, clammy grip tighten. Panic surged through me as I yanked my arm free and kicked it square in the chest. It staggered back, just enough to give me room to swing. The crowbar came down hard, connecting with the side of its head. The sound was sickening, a wet crunch as its skull caved in, spraying the wall with hair, blood, and brain matter. The force of the blow twisted its head grotesquely, like a taco that had been smashed too hard. It slumped to the ground, twitching for a moment before going still. I stood there, panting, staring at what I'd done. My arms were shaking, and for a moment I thought I might throw up. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of rot and iron. But I didn't have time to fall apart. Not now. Survival didn't leave room for hesitation or regret. I wiped the crowbar on the zombie's torn suit, trying not to think about what I had just done. I had to keep moving. I searched the store quickly after that, grabbing what I could: cans of soup, a first aid kit from the pharmacy aisle, and a flashlight that still worked. My bag was nearly bursting by the time I left. The Subaru plant isn't far now. I can see the smokestacks in the distance, a beacon guiding me forward. I don't know what I'll find when I get there, but I have to keep going. This place, this nightmare, it's changing me. I don't know if I'll ever be the same, but at least I'm alive. For now, that has to be enough. I made it. I'm here. The Subaru plant stands before me, a hulking fortress of steel and concrete, just as I remembered it. The sight of it made my chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with a strange mix of relief and dread. This place used to mean long shifts, loud machines, and friendly banter with coworkers. Now it feels like a relic of a dead world. A graveyard with walls. The walk from Lafayette Marketplace was shorter than I thought it would be, but every step felt like an eternity. The closer I got, the more the world seemed to unravel. Cars were abandoned on the roads leading to the plant, many of them smashed and burned. Bodies littered the pavement, twisted in grotesque shapes. Some were still, but others moved. Twitches, slight jerks, signs of life that wasn't life anymore. I kept to the shadows, moving as quietly as I could. My crowbar felt heavier with every step, but I never loosened my grip on it. It's the only thing keeping me alive. When I reached the outer fence, I stopped to catch my breath and survey the area. The plant looked deserted from the outside. No movement, no sounds, just the occasional creak of metal as the wind rustled through the loading docks. The chain-link fence surrounding the facility had been partially torn down in places, and the main gate hung open, its padlock shattered. I've seen enough to know what that means. The plant wasn't untouched. Something, or someone, had already been here, and I doubted they left it better than they found it. I slipped through the gate, keeping low and scanning the area. The parking lot was eerily empty, save for a few cars that looked like they'd been abandoned in a hurry. Papers and debris were scattered across the asphalt, remnants of whatever chaos had unfolded here. I'd spent years walking these grounds during my shifts, but now every step felt foreign, alien, like I was trespassing in a place that no longer belonged to me. The entrance to the main building loomed ahead, the glass doors smeared with dirt and something darker. Blood, maybe. It was dried and streaked like someone had dragged their hand across it. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. Going inside felt like stepping into the unknown, but staying outside wasn't an option. I tightened my grip on the crowbar and pushed the door open, wincing as it creaked loudly in the silence. The lobby was unrecognizable. Chairs were overturned, papers scattered everywhere, and the receptionist's desk was splattered with dried blood. The smell hit me immediately, a mix of rot and stale air. It clung to everything, thick and suffocating. I covered my nose with my sleeve and stepped inside, careful to avoid the larger stains on the floor. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears strain to pick up even the faintest sound. I stood there for a moment, listening, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But nothing did. I moved deeper into the building, heading toward the employee locker rooms. If there were any supplies left, that's where I'd find them. The hallway leading to the lockers was dark, the overhead lights flickering weakly. Every shadow looked like it could move, and my nerves were frayed to the breaking point. I held the crowbar out in front of me, ready to swing at the first sign of danger. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor, each one feeling like a betrayal of my presence. When I reached the locker room, the door was ajar. My stomach twisted. Pushing it open slowly, I peeked inside. The room was empty, at least as far as I could tell. Lockers stood open, their contents strewn across the floor. Someone had been here before me, rummaging through everything. Still, I searched, hoping to find something useful. I managed to grab a flashlight with fresh batteries, a few protein bars, and a half-full water bottle from one of the lockers. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I stuffed everything into my bag and turned to leave, but then I heard it, a faint scraping sound coming from deeper in the building. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. The sound grew louder, closer. It was the unmistakable shuffle of feet dragging against the floor. I gripped the crowbar tightly and backed up against the wall, my eyes darting toward the door. The shuffling stopped, replaced by a low, guttural groan. The first figure appeared in the doorway, its face gaunt and its eyes vacant. Its clothes were tattered, and its skin was stretched tight over its bones, covered in dark veins and patches of dried blood. It spotted me almost immediately, letting out a horrible guttural noise before lunging forward. I swung the crowbar instinctively, the metal connecting with its jaw in a sickening crunch. It staggered back but didn't fall. I swung again, this time aiming for its head. The impact sent it crashing to the floor, motionless. My breaths came in short, ragged gasps as I stared down at the body, my hands shaking. I didn't wait to see if more were coming. I ran back the way I came, not stopping until I was back in the lobby. The building felt more dangerous than ever, but I couldn't leave yet. I needed a secure place to rest, to plan my next move. I headed toward the second floor, where the offices were. I remembered there being a break room up there, with a heavy door that locked from the inside. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could do. When I reached the break room, I locked the door behind me and shoved a table against it for good measure. The room was small but intact, with a few chairs, a fridge, and a couch pushed against the wall. I checked the fridge and found a couple of bottles of water and a pack of string cheese. Not exactly a feast, but it was enough to keep me going. Now I'm sitting on the couch, writing this by the light of my flashlight. The moaning has started again, faint but steady. They know I'm here. They always know. It's like they can sense me, even through the walls. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. Tomorrow, I'll figure out my next move. For now, I just need to rest, or at least try to. I don't know if I can do this anymore. I thought coming here, to the Subaru plant, would give me a fighting chance, but I didn't realize how much it would take from me. This place used to mean long shifts, loud machines, and friendly banter with coworkers. Now, it feels like a mausoleum, and I'm the one carving the epitaphs. It started just after midnight. I was still in the break room, trying to rest. The moaning outside the door had quieted, but it was only a lull. I should have known it wouldn't last. I woke up to the sound of shuffling and scratching, faint but distinct. At first I thought it was outside the building, but then I heard it, the heavy, uneven thud of something climbing the stairs. They were inside. I grabbed my crowbar and backed into the corner of the room. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might give me away. The door was locked, and the table I shoved against it held firm, but the sound of them moving closer made my skin crawl. When the first thud hit the door, I flinched. When the groaning started again, louder this time, I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. The door didn't hold for long. They forced it open, pushing the table aside like it was nothing. The first one through the door used to be Marco. I'd worked with him for years, laughed with him, shared lunches during long shifts, even complained about the same stubborn machines on the line. Now his face was twisted into something monstrous, his skin pale and his eyes empty. He didn't see me, he saw prey. I didn't have time to think. He lunged at me, and I swung the crowbar with everything I had. The metal connected with his temple, and he collapsed to the floor. For a moment I froze, staring at his lifeless body. Marco. I killed Marco. But then another one came through the doorway, and I didn't have the luxury of mourning. This one was Tara. She'd just had her baby a few months ago. We'd thrown her a baby shower in the break room where I'd been hiding. I remembered her laugh, how she'd cried happy tears when we surprised her with a cake shaped like a stroller. Now, she was snarling, her hands clawing at the air as she came toward me. I choked back a sob and swung the crowbar again. I don't even remember the impact. I just remember the sound she made when she hit the floor, like all the air had been forced out of her lungs. I thought I might throw up, but there wasn't time. More of them were coming, their shadows moving in the hallway. I couldn't stay there. I had to keep moving. I ran. I don't even know where I was going, just away from them. The plant was a maze of dark hallways and rooms I once knew so well. Now every corner felt like a trap, every shadow a potential ambush. I could hear them behind me, their groans and shuffling footsteps echoing in the halls. I turned into one of the assembly lines, hoping the narrow walkways and equipment might slow them down. That's where I saw Emma. She was pinned beneath a machine, her legs crushed and useless. She must have been caught during the initial chaos, unable to escape as the others turned. She was one of the kindest people I'd ever met, always bringing homemade cookies to share with everyone during breaks. Now, she was clawing at the ground, dragging herself toward me with a strength that didn't belong to her anymore. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears streaming down my face as I raised the crowbar. She let out a guttural growl, and I brought it down hard. The sound of bone cracking will haunt me forever. I collapsed to my knees after that, sobbing into my hands. These were my friends, my coworkers, people I'd spent years building relationships with, and now I was killing them, one by one. It wasn't fair. None of this was fair. But as much as it hurt, I knew I couldn't stop. If I did, I'd end up like them. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying every moment of my life that brought me to this point. I thought about the good days on the line, the shared victories when we fixed something no one else could. I thought about Marco showing me pictures of his dog, Tara's baby photos, Emma's cookies. The weight of those memories pressed down on me like the machines I once operated. How had it all come to this? The sound of approaching footsteps snapped me out of it. They were still coming. They wouldn't stop. I forced myself to stand, gripping the crowbar so tightly my knuckles turned white. I kept moving, weaving through the plant and taking out anything that got too close. Each swing felt heavier than the last, the weight of what I was doing pressing down on me. By the time I found a small storage closet to hide in, I was covered in blood, theirs and mine. I locked the door behind me and slid to the floor, my body shaking with exhaustion. The walls of the closet felt like they were closing in, but at least I was safe for now. I've never felt so alone. These walls used to be filled with life, with laughter, with purpose. Now they're just a tomb, and I'm the last living thing inside. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Every face I see is someone I used to know, and every blow I land takes a piece of me with it. I keep asking myself why I'm still trying. Maybe it's instinct, maybe it's hope, maybe it's the fear of becoming one of them. I don't know. But for now, I'm still breathing. I'm still me. And as long as that's true, I'll keep fighting, even if it kills me. I've been sitting in this storage closet for what feels like hours, but I can't tell anymore. Time doesn't make sense in this place. The Subaru plant, the one place I thought might save me, feels more like a death trap. Was it a mistake to come here? Did I make the wrong choice, trading one nightmare for another? I thought I knew this place. I spent years walking these halls, working the machines, building something that mattered. But now, every room, every corridor feels like it's turned against me. The shadows are too deep, the air too heavy. The sounds of shuffling feet and guttural groans never stop. This isn't the plant I knew. It's a labyrinth of horror, and I don't know if I'll ever find my way out. After I left the break room, I tried to map a path to the old security office. It's near the back of the plant, where the assembly line ends. I figured if I could get there, I might find cameras, keys, maybe even a weapon better than this crowbar. But the path there is a maze, and the things that walk these halls aren't giving me much time to think. I've had to fight more of them. Too many. Marco, Tara, Emma, their faces are burned into my memory. I keep telling myself it's not them anymore, but that doesn't stop the guilt from clawing at me. How many more people am I going to recognize before this is over? How many more friends will I have to kill to stay alive? This morning, I ran into Kevin, at least what was left of him. He was the plant's security guard, always joking around and sneaking us snacks from his stash. I saw him stumbling through the loading dock, his uniform torn and his face, his face. Half of it was gone, torn away, leaving bone and sinew exposed. He didn't make a sound until he saw me, then he lunged. I didn't have time to think. I swung the crowbar as hard as I could, and it connected with his chest, sending him backward. But he didn't stay down. He came at me again, and I had to hit him in the head, twice. By the time it was over, I was covered in his blood. I sat there, shaking, staring at his body and wondering if I'd made the right call coming here. Kevin deserved better. They all did. Marco, Tara, Emma, Kevin, they were good people. They were my people. And now, they're gone. Worse than gone. They're monsters, and I'm the one who has to put them down. This place feels like it's swallowing me whole. The walls seem to close in tighter with every hour. The air feels heavier, suffocating. I used to think of the plant as a place of purpose, where we created something tangible, something real. Now, it's just a graveyard. And I don't know if I can keep walking through it. The smell here is unbearable. The rot lingers in every corner, sticking to my clothes, my skin, my hair. No matter where I go, it's there, a constant reminder of what this place has become. Every step I take seems to stir up more memories, good ones, the kind that make this nightmare even harder to bear. I remember the coffee breaks with Marco, the way Tara used to tease Kevin about his stash of chips, Emma's quiet laugh whenever someone told a bad joke. Now, all of that feels like another lifetime. A dream I'll never get back. I've started to wonder if I made a mistake. Maybe I should have stayed in my apartment, fortified it better, tried to wait it out. At least there, I didn't have to see the faces of the people I cared about twisted into something unrecognizable. At least there, the ghosts were in my head and not clawing at my throat. But staying in the apartment wasn't an option, was it? I tell myself that over and over. The fire, the moaning outside the door, the smoke choking the air, I had to leave. But knowing I had no choice doesn't make this any easier. I keep hearing the groans in my head, even when the halls go quiet. The sound is different for everyone I've killed. Marco's was deep, guttural. Tara's was high-pitched, almost a scream. Kevin didn't groan until the end. He just stared at me, his hollow eyes locking onto mine like he remembered something, some fragment of who he used to be. I wonder if they feel anything, if some part of them knows what they've become. If they do, maybe killing them really is a mercy. But it doesn't feel like mercy when I'm the one swinging the crowbar. The security office is still my goal. If I can make it there, maybe I'll find something useful. A map, a weapon, a plan, something to make this all feel less hopeless. But the thought of stepping out of this closet and back into those halls makes me feel like I'm suffocating. My hands are shaking just thinking about it. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Every step forward feels like a step deeper into hell. I keep asking myself why I'm even trying. What's the point of surviving if this is all that's left? If all I'm doing is trading one nightmare for another? But then I think about my grandmother. Her voice, her laugh, her stories about perseverance and faith. She always said, "You don't stop just because it's hard, Elena. You keep going because the hard times don't last forever." I don't know if she'd say the same thing now, but her words are all I have. I can't stop. Not yet. I'll rest a little longer, then I'll move. The security office isn't far. I just need to stay quiet and stay focused. Maybe there's still a way out of this. Maybe coming here wasn't a mistake. I have to believe that, or I'll lose what little fight I have left. This is it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. The killing, the hiding, the constant fear. This place, this plant, this city, they've taken everything from me. My friends, my peace, my sanity. I thought coming here would save me, but all it's done is chip away at what's left of me. I can't keep doing this. I have to leave. I have to find something better. The morning light was pale when I made the decision. I spent the early hours in the security office, going through the keys. The space felt oppressive, like the walls were pressing down on me. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was foreboding. But in that silence, I found a set of keys labeled Lot C and made up my mind. They belonged to a Subaru Forester, a silver one we'd assembled just a few months ago. I remember tightening bolts on its frame, double-checking its systems. It felt poetic, in a way, that this car might now be the thing to save me. When I stepped outside, the plant loomed behind me like a shadow I couldn't shake. The parking lot was eerily empty, save for a few cars scattered here and there, dust-covered and forgotten. I made my way to the Forester, the keys jangling in my hand like tiny bells of freedom. The sight of it sitting there, untouched, felt like a sign. I climbed in, locked the doors, and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. For the first time in days, I let out a long, shaky breath. The engine roared to life, and with it, something inside me stirred. Hope. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. I eased out of the lot, the tires crunching over debris, and headed toward the highway. The city felt like a ghost town, its streets littered with the remnants of panic. Abandoned cars, shattered glass, the occasional bloody handprint smeared on a wall. I avoided the main roads, sticking to side streets and alleys, but even they were haunted by the memories of what had happened here. As I drove, the scenery began to change. The skeletal remains of Lafayette gave way to the outskirts, where the buildings thinned and the land opened up. The roads were quieter here, flanked by stretches of grass that had grown wild and unkempt. The further I went, the more the air seemed to lighten, as if the weight of the city was finally lifting off my chest. Then I saw them. Cows. A small herd grazing in an overgrown field beside the road. They looked almost untouched by everything that had happened, their slow, rhythmic chewing a stark contrast to the chaos I'd just left behind. One of them raised its head to watch me pass, its dark eyes calm and unbothered. It was such a simple thing, but it made my throat tighten. Life. Real, unbroken life. It still existed. The further I drove, the more the world around me seemed to breathe again. Farmhouses began to dot the landscape, their red and white paint peeling but still standing strong against the horizon. Fences lined the fields, some broken, some still intact, and in the distance, I saw a group of wild horses galloping through the grass. Their manes streamed behind them like banners, their hooves kicking up dust that shimmered in the golden light of the setting sun. They were beautiful, free, untouched by the horrors that had consumed everything else. But the reminders of the apocalypse were still there, lurking at the edges. A lone zombie wandered aimlessly through a field, its tattered clothes flapping in the breeze. It didn't notice the cows nearby or the horses in the distance. It didn't notice me. It just kept moving, its steps slow and uneven, like it was searching for something it had forgotten. I shivered and pressed the gas pedal a little harder. As the city fell further behind me, the road became emptier, quieter. The fields stretched endlessly on either side, rolling gently under the soft colors of the evening sky. The air smelled different here, cleaner, with hints of grass and earth instead of rot and smoke. For the first time in what felt like forever, I rolled down the window and let the breeze brush against my face. It was cool, refreshing, and carried with it a sense of possibility. I passed a small pond reflecting the colors of the sky, its surface smooth like glass. Ducks floated lazily across it, their ripples the only movement. It was a scene I would have overlooked before, too ordinary to hold my attention. But now, it felt like a gift, a reminder that the world hadn't completely fallen apart. Eventually, I came across a gas station, an old one with a rusted sign that creaked in the wind. The pumps looked ancient, but they still worked. I filled up the tank, my eyes scanning the empty lot for any signs of movement. There was none. Inside the station, I found a few bottles of water, a couple of cans of soup, and a bag of stale chips. It wasn't much, but it felt like a treasure. Back on the road, the miles slipped by in a blur of green and gold. The sky began to darken, the stars emerging one by one to light my path. I'd been driving northwest for hours, following the vague idea that North Dakota, with its small towns and open spaces, might be a place where I could start over. I didn't have a plan, just a direction and the faint hope that somewhere out there, things were better. As I crossed into what I guessed was the edge of a new state, I spotted a small farmhouse nestled at the end of a dirt road. Its windows were dark, its porch sagging, but it looked intact. I slowed the car, my heart pounding. Could this be it? Could this be a place to rest, to rebuild? I parked a distance away and approached cautiously, crowbar in hand. The door was unlocked, the air inside stale but not rotten. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no bodies, just an empty house waiting for someone to call it home. I checked every room, every corner, holding my breath each time I turned a corner, but it was empty, safe. I sat on the floor of the living room, letting the silence wash over me. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Outside, the wind rustled through the fields, carrying with it the soft hum of crickets. The moonlight streamed through the windows, casting everything in a gentle glow. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know if I'll find people, a group, a reason to keep going. But for now, I found a moment of peace. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to start again.